You have to forgive me.
Aw, sis.
I first met Mr. Rock 2 years ago when I was the public relations officer for the Atlanta Tuskegee Airman. I apologize.
Go ahead.
And we were actually doing another program with the airmen at Sam's Club. And Mr. Rock was there on a shopping excursion with his caretaker in wheelchair. And his caretaker rolled him up to the front of the presentation. And none of us knew who he was. So his caretaker introduced him to us as a Tuskegee Airman. And I mean, of course, immediately we accepted him, but there's certain processes and procedures. We have to get documents, we have to verify them. The official word for that is vetting. So his caretaker provided me with the documents. I submitted them. About 30 days later, they told us that he was a Tuskegee Airman. I'm sorry, just forgive me. The reason I'm crying is because this has been 2 years in the making. So this was in 2012 when we met him at Sam's Club. And I promised him that I would make sure that he was properly honored. But in the course of that, life took place. I relocated to Washington, D.C. Nathan Knight, who will speak later, the president of DeKalb County SDLC, he was there also on the day when we met Mr. Rock. And he also promised him that we would make sure that he was properly honored. But at that time, Nathan wasn't the president of DeKalb SDLC. So his schedule dramatically became more hectic. But in the course of the 2 years, I got some harsh reminders that it still needed to be done for Mr. Rock. In October, I got word that Mr. Graham, he was a 98-year-old Tuskegee Airman. I got word that he passed, and I was very close to him. So I had to travel back to Atlanta for the homegoing. And ironically, Kamal texted me as I was driving from D.C. to Atlanta. And he told me that Mr. Rock lost a great portion of his eyesight. So that was the first reminder to me that we have to make sure we did this for Mr. Rock. And then on New Year's Eve, past New Year's Eve of 2013, I got a phone call from his caretaker. She's been keeping in touch with me, speaking to me regularly. She told me that he just turned 90. New Year's Eve is his birthday.
Oh,
So that was my final reminder. I said he's 90 years old now. He's no longer young. 89 is still young, but 90, we have to get work. So that's when I began contacting the Congressman. He was so gracious to do this. So we worked on a date about maybe 30 days ago. They said we can do this. Actually, they wanted to do it in March. But March was a major occasion, which I'm not sure if you all have heard about. The first Tuskegee Airman stamp was released for Chief Anderson. And we're blessed actually to have his son with us today. And for those of you who don't know, Chief Anderson was the man. That's the only way to describe him. He was the only African American in the nation qualified to teach flight at the time. So he's responsible for, he was the lead trainer for the Tuskegee Airmen. So when we talk about these men, there was a chief behind it, and he's not actually a chief, but they had to appoint him that title because he was just that great. So Chief Anderson, we have his son. The post office released a stamp for him in March, and I was actually working on that program, which was quite consuming. So when they said March, I said, we want this day, but is it possible we can do it in April? So they said, we have Good Friday open. And then I debated, do I want to do it on this religious holiday? And then I said, with Mr. Rock, we can't wait.
oh, it's fitting though.
So we did it on Good Friday, and now we're making it Great Friday. So,
Amen.
extend appreciations to so many people who have made it possible. The Tuskegee Airman Motorcycle Club, if they stand up. And I actually met these gentlemen at the homegoing service of Mr. Graham. He was the airman that passed in October of last year at 98 years old. They were there for him, and my observation is that they are there. Anytime you call on them, they're there in their leather vests, their red shirts, their motorcycles. It rained today, so there's no motorcycle, but they are truly men of devotion. I have to thank them. Mr. Anderson, I saw you 2 days ago in Tuskegee, and you're back here again. I don't know how you do it. And last month, you were in Brain Mar for the stand release, so thank you for coming. I have to thank the Honorable Mayor, Johnny Ford, for committing as well. I thank the Triple Nickels. Those were the first African-American parachute men. And their group is joining us as well, if you all will stand up. I also would like to send appreciation to John Eves, the president of DeKalb County SCLC, to the Georgia Commission on the Holocaust, who graciously accepted this invitation with just weeks' notice, to Mr. Hartman, and to all of you for coming out on Good Friday. Because surely you could have been in church, surely you could have been relaxing or any other place. So, and forgive me for the emotions, because it's just been 2 years. And one more caveat that I have to add to the story of Mr. Rock is that as we were commencing this program, the unimaginable happened, which is why it's very emotional for me. As we were planning the program, we got word from the Tuskegee Airman group that they could not find his records. And we've been working 2 years on this. So because a laptop crashed, we could not find his records. So we were almost at the point where we couldn't do it. But working with SCLC, the DeKalb SCLC helped us in this. One thing that I profoundly remember is that Martin Luther King said, there's no wrong time to do it right. So, we just had to make sure that we did it. In the legacy of Martin Luther King, and Jerry, and the legacy of SCLC, Reverend Sam Mosteller, who gave the invitation. He's the president of the Georgia chapter, well, the entire state of Georgia for SCLC.